Okay, so I in that last part I showed you just a picture of a species that has been given a more valuable position in this system, that this global system that is in operation, than that of a member of this species here. This is the human species right here. And again, in that class, that environmental ethics class, we were I think sometimes that the title for that philosophy class, I think sometimes that it can be misleading, because you've got people who are, they're thinking, of environment and from only one perspective. Some of them went in there with the idea that we were going to be talking about, saving the redwood forest, or saving the, what was another big one that a lot of people knew about, or saving the spotted owl, and because that is the environment, and yet people are part of the environment, and economic and government systems are part of the environment. I mean, environment means so many different things on so many different levels, and so I think it caught a lot of people off guard when we talked about it, when we moved from speaking about those topics that are generally associated with the environment into, the kind of like not so mainstream topics, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to just show some pictures here. Again, these are in this system that we have in place. There is there's this value, okay, on life, that a value has been placed on life, and unfortunately, one of the species that is given more life, is our cows, and so you have somebody like this individual here, this child who, if I can see if I can show you there, you can see the rib cage, you can see the thin arms, and his life is not given as much precedence, and that is, I don't know, I mean, and how did it come to be that way? Okay, remember I said, that there are philosophers who have distinguished that a life form that can feel pain, that life has more intrinsic value than a life form that doesn't feel pain, or a life form that is self-aware, that can perceive a future for itself, and that can actually plan and make that future for themselves, that their life has more value than, say, a clam or a mussel who has probably doesn't feel pain, probably has no concept of a future, or that is self-aware, okay? But we have a system in place that is putting more value on those forms of life than on this form of life right here. And when you see, for me and a lot of people, when we see images like this, okay, or the previous image of a child, their arms are so thin, their eyes are so wide in their face, their cheeks are so gaunt, and they're starving like that. There are people who, one way of dealing with this is to suggest things like maybe they shouldn't have as many children. Okay, if there weren't as many children in that part of the world, then maybe they wouldn't be starving, and we wouldn't have this problem. And that comes from, I mean, these are not pretty images. These images are they're grotesque. I mean, they're sad. They're frightening. Okay, and so that seems to be like a real easy way to deal with the solution, is just for those people down in that part of the world to not have as many children, okay? And then you wouldn't have this situation, and the children wouldn't be starving. and there would be fewer mouths to feed, therefore there would be more food to go around. And that seems, on a certain level, it seems to make sense, okay? And yet, I question that, okay? And that was one of the other questions that came up was, remember, one of the questions was who gets to determine, whose life is more valuable, and who decides that these are the people who make that decision, okay? And this picture here was, it was pretty controversial because it's an image of a young child trying to make it to a food camp to get some food, and it's obviously, it is so weak, okay? Its arms, its legs cannot support it. It is trying to crawl to the food camp, okay, to get some food. And in the background you see the vulture, and anyone who's ever done any hiking in nature understands, okay, I've seen it, okay, myself, okay, where you see vultures circling, okay, there is someone, something, some life form is dead or is dying, okay, and that is exactly what is happening here. This vulture, they can sense that. This vulture is waiting for this child to die so that it can feed on it, okay, and this was a very controversial picture. And so, a lot of people, their immediate response was, again, what I call blame the victim. Well, if those people down there weren't having as many babies, then there wouldn't be as many children starving, and there wouldn't be as many mouths to feed, and there would be more food to go around. Well, that was something that we talked about that in the class, okay? Because that is a very valid question, because what does that mean to bring life into the world, knowing that the cards are stacked against it, knowing that, okay, that it's probably not going to live beyond the age of 5 years old, okay? But another point that we looked at, which I wanted to offer for us, is why don't we change our way of life, okay? It seems to be that we have placed more value on our lives than the people on that end of the world, yet the people that are living in these developed countries, like this one right here, okay, are creating more problems for the planet and for the majority of other species on the planet than those people in the other part of the world. So how about if we change our way of life, then there won't be a need for us to take their food from them to feed our food animals, okay? How about that? Okay, we are creating more problems for the planet than those other people are. And if you look at this right here, you see, let me just get a close-up of that. You've got this freeway, you've got these cars, you've got a misuse of natural resources to build overpasses, okay, and freeways and on-ramps, and you've got the misuse of resources to build these cars, with these combustible engines and the exhaust and the smog that it adds to the environment. So how about if we change our way of life? Is there something so special and so sacred about what we are doing on this part of the world, on this hemisphere, okay, that is worth destroying the majority of other species on the planet? Remember I mentioned the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, and the observation that alien made, that there are very few planets in the universe that can sustain life. This planet is one that has been blessed with life and an abundance of species, yet one of the species is dominating and destroying the planet and the other species that are on it. So perhaps it's time for us to change our way of life, okay? Now, see, that's when people kind of want to not look at that, okay? But that's just something to think about. So please, rate these videos, give me your comment on, whether you think that is, that I'm just being, a troublesome rebel frack and just trying to be a dissenter, or if there might be a little bit of truth to what I'm saying. Okay, it's Rebel Frack.